Welcome to Hurry Up Pinball, a show where I teach you how to work on your pinball machine. Today I will show you how to install PinWoofer's GT Spike-2 Super Kit. This tutorial covers Spike and Spike-2 systems, so grab your tools and let's get going. This tutorial will show you how to install the items in the PinWoofer kit, as well as how to dial in your amp settings. Step number 2 is just as important as the installation process, so be sure not to skip that section after the installation is complete. The PinWoofer kit comes with some basic instructions regarding installation. If you would like detailed instructions on how to install your kit, go to pinwoofer.com, create an account, select Downloads, then pick your system and download the installation instructions. Here you can see the items that come in the Super Kit. Each box is individually labeled for easy reference. The Super Kit includes the PinWoofer amplifier, a 3D printed amp housing with hardware, a wiring harness, expander board and power board, a cabinet speaker, speaker adapter, and playfield glass anti-rattle tape, 2 backbox cabinet speakers, and 2 3D printed speaker mount adapters with hardware. To complete this installation, you will need a 5/16 and 11/32 hex driver. Before beginning this installation, you want to make sure you have access to the sides of the pinball cabinet and backbox. Before beginning any work, unplug the pinball machine. Now open the coin door, remove the backbox keys, and close the coin door. Unlock and lower the speaker panel, then remove the translight. Be sure to put it in a safe location. Now open the coin door, remove the lockdown bar, and remove the playfield glass. Go ahead and raise the speaker panel and lock it back into place. Since we will be raising the playfield, be sure to remove any playfield lights you have installed. If you have cabinet protectors, now is a good time to use them. Now raise the playfield and place it on the end of the support brackets. Next, remove the pinballs from the machine. Now lower the speaker panel to gain access to the bottom of the backbox. Feed the PinWoofer wiring harness into the bottom right hole of the backbox that leads to the pinball cabinet. You want to feed the end with the red and white RCA connectors and the Molex connector through this hole. Feeding the harness down the right side will allow easier access to the amp when you need to access it. You will want to leave about 3 feet of cable available for connecting the wiring harness to the backbox board. Here is a picture of the harness when properly routed. At this time, we're going to install the amp mounting bracket. For this, you will need to raise the playfield, so raise and lock the speaker panel at this time. To avoid scratching the apron or backbox, I like to place a small blanket or towel on the backbox. Now go ahead and fully raise the playfield. Go ahead and open the coin door at this time. The amp mount can be installed with the included hardware for a maximum amount of security. Since I did not want to install screws in the bottom of the cabinet, I used 3M very high bond double-sided tape. If you do not use screws to install the amp mount, PinWoofer recommends removing the amp prior to transporting the pinball machine. PinWoofer recommends mounting the amp in this location for easy access. They also caution against mounting it to the side of the pinball cabinet. Now go ahead and install the amp in the mounting bracket with the 5 knobs facing the left side of the cabinet and the gain knob facing the right side of the cabinet as shown here. Here is what it should look like when installed in the mounting bracket. With the amp now placed in the bracket, close the coin door and lower the playfield and rest it on the end of the support brackets. You can remove the backbox towel at this time. On the main backbox board, unplug the 5-pin factory connector from CN7. Remove the connector using the plastic connector and do not pull directly on the wires. Now grab the PinWoofer power board and install it on CN7. The power board is keyed, so be sure to line up the pins. Push gently until it locks into position. While holding the power board, install the 5-pin factory connector to the PinWoofer power board. Since these connectors are keyed, make sure to line them up properly. Here is what it should look like when properly installed. Now take the 2-pin connector from the PinWoofer wiring harness and connect it to the 2 available pins on the power board. Make sure the connector is installed in the proper orientation. Here is what the 2-pin connector should look like once properly installed. Next, unplug the 5-pin connector from CN1 and the 2-pin connector from CN4. As these will no longer be needed, you can use the wire looms to keep them out of the way. Now grab the expander board and simultaneously plug the expander board into CN1 and CN4. Do not remove the tape on the expander board. Grab the 3.5mm cable from the PinWoofer wiring harness, and while holding the expander board, plug in the 3.5mm cable. Here is what it should look like when properly installed. Now lower the speaker panel and tidy up the harness wires using the existing wire looms or the zip ties included with the kit. I highly recommend leaving some slack in the wires to avoid putting direct pressure on the main board. This is also helpful if you need to lower the head on the pinball machine. You do not want to rip the connectors off of the board. Now it is time to remove the stock back box speakers. Use your 5/16 hex driver and remove the 2 nuts holding on the factory speaker, then disconnect the 2-pin connector. You can reuse the original hardware or use the supplied hardware from the PinWoofer kit. You no longer need the plastic washers underneath the speaker, so go ahead and remove them. Install the 3D printed speaker adapter on the speaker panel. This mount is directional, so make sure you mount it where it sits flush against the monitor side. There should be some open space between the outside of the speaker panel and the 3D printed adapter as shown here. Using the hardware you removed earlier, or the supplied hardware, install a washer and then a lock nut, and then secure the adapter, making sure to center it as much as possible. Here is a look at the stock speaker I removed next to the speaker that we will be installing. As you can see, there's a big difference between the 2 speakers. Now install the speaker with the positive and negative terminal facing the bottom of the speaker panel as shown here. Using the hardware in the PinWoofer kit, install 1 washer and 1 lock nut on each post, and then use your 11/32 hex driver to tighten down the nuts. Here is what it should look like when properly installed. Now repeat this process for the speaker on the other side and make sure to mount the speaker adapter in the proper orientation where it is flush against the monitor. From the PinWoofer wiring harness, grab the speaker connector labeled right and connect the blue wire to the positive terminal and the black wire to the negative terminal. If you need to, you can separate the wires a little bit so there is less pressure on the terminals. Here is how it should look when properly installed. Go ahead and repeat this process for the speaker on the other side. Remember, blue wire to the positive terminal and black wire to the negative terminal. You can use the existing wire looms to route the speaker cable. Go ahead and raise the speaker panel and lock it into place. Place a towel on the back box and fully raise the playfield again to gain access to the pinball cabinet. Now grab the wiring harness that you fed into the cabinet and feed it to the right front corner. There will be plenty of slack that sits in the cabinet, and this will allow you to remove the amp while still connected so you can tweak the amp settings. You will notice 2 audio connectors in the middle of the wiring harness for the cabinet speaker. Here you can see how much extra slack is available in the harness. Next, we will be removing the cabinet speaker. Undo the 2-pin connector, then grab your 5/16 hex driver and remove the nuts and washers, followed by the cabinet speaker. PinWoofer recommends removing the plastic mesh grill before installing the new speaker. If you do not remove the grill, it will frequently rattle. You can use a pair of scissors to cut a small slit in the mesh for the threaded nail and pull it out to the side. Be careful not to cut the ground braid. Now install the MDF adapter using the supplied hardware. Place a washer on each post, followed by a lock nut, then use your 5/16 hex driver to tighten it down. Here you can see the big difference between the stock speaker on the left and the new speaker on the right. Grab the new speaker and install it on the adapter with the terminals facing the back of the pinball cabinet. Be careful when lining up the speaker holes and go slowly. If you rush this step, you may accidentally damage the speaker with the posts that are on the mounting ring. Again, using the supplied hardware, install one washer and one lock nut on each post and use your 5/16 hex driver to tighten down the speaker. Now grab the connectors from the PinWoofer wiring harness and install the red wire on the positive terminal and the black wire on the negative terminal. Be gentle and take your time when sliding on the connectors. Next, grab the Molex connector on the wiring harness and connect it to the Molex connector from the amp. Go ahead and connect the power cable and the red and white RCA cables to the amp as shown here. Now fully lower the playfield, remove the cabinet protectors and the towel from the back box. Then lower the speaker panel, install the translite, then raise and lock the speaker panel. At this time, go ahead and reinstall the pinballs in the machine. Install the playfield glass and lockdown bar, open the coin door and place the back box keys on the hook and close the coin door. Go ahead and push the pinball machine back into position if you moved it earlier. Now we will discuss dialing in the amp and the auto mute feature. This step is very important to getting the best sound out of the PinWoofer kit, so do not skip it. Open the coin door, remove the amp from the mount, and place it on the playfield glass. The amp has rubber feet on the bottom to avoid scratching the glass. Go ahead and plug in the pinball machine at this time. If your machine has a white pin for the lockout switch inside the coin door, go ahead and pull it to the out position. This will allow the game to boot normally with the coin door open. Be careful when reaching inside the pinball machine with the pin pulled out, as there will be high voltage flowing under the playfield. To begin dialing in the amp, I like to start with all the knobs in the 12 o'clock position. Be sure to check that the gain knob on the back of the amp is at the 12 o'clock position as well. Using the volume control buttons on the coin door, set the volume to 14 or 15 in the volume menu. At this time, I want to discuss the auto mute feature. This feature is included in the amp as a way to silence older games that hum or buzz when they are not being played. This feature is amazing for older machines that suffer from this issue. As a result of having the auto mute feature included, it is possible for the amp to trigger the auto mute at very low noise levels. If you watch the amp, you will see the auto mute kick in every time the volume is extremely low, as indicated by the red light. You will also hear the audio cut in and out as the volume level is adjusted up or down. To avoid this issue, I would recommend setting the volume on the coin door to 14 and increasing the gain on the amp from the 12 o'clock position to about 230. With this setting, the new range of volume using the volume button on the coin door is between 10 and 20. If you lower the volume on the coin door below about 8, the signal to the amp is low and will trigger the auto mute. With the gain and volume set properly, you can move the volume knob on the amp and adjust that to your liking. Again, I would suggest setting the coin door volume to 14 and placing the gain knob between 2 and 3 o'clock. Here you can see that as I adjust the volume up and down on the coin door, the auto mute will turn on or off, with the gain in the 230 position. I have a usable range of 10 to 20 for volume controls with the coin door. PinWoofer recommends not turning your game higher than 20 on the coin door volume controls. If you would like the sound to be a bit lower, leave the coin door volume at 14 and the gain knob at around 2 to 3 o'clock and adjust the volume knob on the amp. This will avoid issues with the auto mute kicking in. With the auto mute issue addressed, now it is time to dial in the amp. You want to make sure that you dial in the amp with the playfield glass installed. You do not want to try and dial in the amp with the playfield glass removed, as this can drastically affect the sound. I would suggest hitting the start button to get some music and sound effects going, then play with the individual settings until you find a setting you like. You can adjust the bass frequency, bass volume, backbox volume, treble, and overall volume. Play several games on various settings to find out what you like. You can also go to pinwoofer.com and click on their blog to find settings for various games, and be sure to submit your settings as well. For Elvira's House of Horrors, here's the settings I ultimately ended up using. Just remember, each game is going to be a little bit different. With your amp now dialed in, go ahead and place the amp back in the mounting bracket. Be sure to push the coin door pin in before reaching into the machine, as this will stop high voltage flow under the playfield. With the amp back in the mounting bracket, close the coin door and play a few more test games. This is Craig with Hurry Up Pinball, and I wanted to say thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, show your support for Hurry Up Pinball and click the subscribe button. We can also be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under Hurry Up Pinball.